And we are live. Here we go. Awesome. All right, well, we're going to get started. Hi, thank you for being here. I'm Nicole, and this is Bill, and we are from the Aldrich team today. And I'm just going to kick this off with a really scary statistic. A quarter of online transactions fail. One quarter, 25% of online transactions fail, and that's according to Boston Consulting. So today we're going to discuss how e-commerce data is nothing short. When you lose that is a nightmare. And I'm not sure if that's an anxiety that you experience on a daily basis, but it's definitely something that we have seen in our business. So it's not just about missing data or possibly losing all your transactions. It's about losing customer trust, damaging your brand, and stalling your business growth. Your e-commerce website has to have a backup system to ensure transactions are safeguarded during any interruptions with your ERP sync. And let's face it, we all know that we would like ERP systems to be 100% reliable. However, if you have done implementation of an ERP, you know that nothing is perfect and that we have to build systems for when there are expected failures. And no matter how hard your ERP tries to provide perfection, there are going to be times when it is unavailable. And for our part, it is vital that your online transactions aren't lost when connected to your ERP or when you're connected to your e-commerce. So this is what we're tackling in today's short presentation. Stick around for some strategies to look for and to mitigate some of these pitfalls in your e-commerce website. So let's look at maybe how this works. How does this work inside a B2B e-commerce site? You'll see on the slide here that your customer will place an order on your website, right? The basis of e-commerce. Here at Aldrich, we call those web carts, but whatever your e-commerce provider may call it something different. But the important part is that they found your website and they placed the order. And then let's just say somewhere in that 1 minute, the ERP import service goes down, or some blip goes down, or the internet crashes, or fill in the blank of something that risk happens. What happens to that transaction and that data? Well, for us and for you, it's important that your e-commerce website continues to work. And for Aldrich, that means that your customers, wherever they are, can continue to place orders on your e-commerce site. It just won't sync immediately back to your ERP. You and your customers will have a fail-safe and should have a fail-safe like a hard copy email or some kind of system where in case those non-perfection things don't go right, you can make sure that you have some sort of copy of the orders that had gone through. I know that it's not your favorite thing to do. This is why you're having an e-commerce site that integrates with your ERP, but sometimes if something happens, you can enter that in manually. Thank goodness that you have a fail-safe, like a hard email to look back on, even though it will take more time and less productivity out of your day. At least you won't lose orders. So we're going to show you what this looks like from our perspective on the next slide. This might get a little bit into the weeds, but how can you see this? Like, how do you know that your syncs are, there's a fail-safe, there's some sort of mechanism there that will keep the ERP safe and your e-commerce website orders safe? Inside our e-commerce, so we call our e-commerce WebAlliance, we created this to address this kind of ERP integration that's not perfect. Again, we're not knocking on the ERP systems. We are simply saying, well, you've got a plan for when the failure happens, and we do that for you and our customers. So in the event of a system downtime, something happens in between placing the order and when the ERP cannot grab that order from you, transactions need to be accurately logged. And these 4 titles you can see on the screen are what we call them. So we call 4 statuses within our e-commerce site. One is pending, one is processing, and then once those 2 have passed through, as you see, it's either that the order has been processed or aborted. None of the disruptions in any of these arrows are fatal because at every data point, someplace the data is stored because the failure or the interruption is planned for. So first and foremost, we've talked about this already, but you'll get an email and your customers will get an email. And it's a pain in the butt when you have to go back and enter those in manually, but that's much better than coming into work that morning and realizing your orders are gone and you don't know who ordered or what's in inventory or what needs to go that day. So you will get an email. Then the pending, happens during pending. So your customer places an order on your website. This is pretty typical. We kind of have this hang time system that you'll see in a minute. Sometimes can take a second, sometimes can take up to 60 seconds, but this is just when the order is, the customer has clicked add to web cart and processed it. So the website is kind of thinking through it, and then it goes into processing. And processing is when the gateway has reacted to what the cart says, and it's trying to get it into your ERP system. That's why it is called processing. Obviously, pretty logical. Once it gets to the processed or aborted, obviously we all want the process to happen 100% of the time. We want the order placed, we want the ERP to speak to what the website is saying it is, and the order to go through. And then, of course, all of your other shipping and packing and delivery systems and tax and all that stuff happens. But what we're really addressing today is what happens when it heads to aborted, which you'll see in just a minute. So let's just say the ERP gets the order and it flags it. There's either an error or they don't get the order. Something happens in between speaking from one to the other. What are you going to do? Well, aborted means that the customer receives an order specifically for the import and is unsure whether the ERP gets it. That will be something you'll have to discuss within your ERP, but at least you will be alerted, hey, this order didn't speak right. Why don't you come check it out? And then you can take the appropriate steps or whatever your steps are internally to say, okay, why isn't this working? Reach out to us and we can figure out where the missteps were and get that aborted transaction back into processed. So Bill's going to show you what that looks like on our end here in just a second.
All right. So what Nicole is talking about is actually whenever a customer comes on one of our sites and places an order, and just the fail-safe that is in place. So they come on in this situation, they only know a partial, right? They remember something ended in 456, and they're going to find that item on our site. They can actually go to see it. They can see all kinds of information. But for this demo, let's go ahead and just add one to the cart. So it's going to go ahead and add it to the cart. You can see it also shows things that you might be interested that you could add to the cart also, but we're going to go ahead and just view this cart with this single tape measure. So we come to the cart, we're going to hit checkout, and it's going to walk through the process of checking out the ship tos that are actually in the ERP. Continue, I pick that. I could pick my delivery method using the APIs. I could actually, in this case, it's tiered shipping, but you could have APIs that would show you actually what UPS would charge. If it requires a PO in your ERP, then it's going to require them to put in a PO in. We're going to continue and finish the checkout. So it has created cart 15949, which is what Nicole was explaining, right? So now they're going to get an email saying that a cart has created, and you're going to get an email that's saying that the cart has been created too. So the next step, right, is how do we get it into the ERP, or what is the system in case it doesn't make it into the ERP? So when we go to the back end of WebAlliance, you can see that it shows the recent carts. So here's a cart earlier that's purchased today, and it's at processed, exactly what Nicole was explaining, right? So the cart we just did here is actually in pending. So when we talk about the going through the process, and we talked about an email, so they're going to get an email. So this is the email that was sent to the person that placed the order. So they have all that information and is captured as a cart. Now let's see if we've processed. So we went from pending till now we're into processing. So here we have the two different choices, right? It's going to be processed or it's going to be aborted. So I don't have one that was aborted, but let's go ahead and just look at some of the details that we're capturing in our failsafe on the end. And you can kind of see that in the process order. So when I click to the screen here, I can see, so this was the cart 15948 that I was created earlier. And back in the ERP, now it has become an order number. So that's what Nicole talked about as far as the process, right? So this one actually processed through. Now, if it didn't, right, we would be flagging and it would not say processed and it would say that it was aborted. And then it would give you the reason, what is that opportunity? And it would give you a chance to go ahead and update and then reset this cart. Or if it is not something in order that you're going to process, someone's manually done it, then you can go ahead and purge that cart. Let's check and see if there's an update and see if my cart processed. Oh, still in processing. It can take a few minutes sometimes in order to process. It's going through, it's communicating back to the ERP to say, here is the information that we have, right? And this is the information that we're wanting to create this cart and turn it to an order. And you can see on this one earlier, right? So here is the cart number again, but here is the actual, whenever it processed, it was assigned an order number in the ERP.
That was going to be one of my questions, is the order number there in the ERP? That's
Yeah.
copied back into the ERP.
Yep,
Okay.
that's where it was generated in the ERP and then pushed back, right,
Mhm.
onto WebAlliance. So now you're no longer looking at a cart number, you're actually just referencing the ERP, the order number from the ERP. So that is our fail safe, right? To give you that opportunity, if something fails, that it is actually being captured in the cart. And when we talk about fails, fails could be as simple as it lost the connection to ERP, right? You lost internet, you lost power. Where do you store all that information so that it can be captured and not lost? And I don't know, just to be clear, what was that statement you said at the beginning, Nicole? How many orders fail in e-commerce?
25%. 25% of transactions fail.
Yeah. So
That's a
can you
lot.
imagine? Right. Yeah. If you're doing 100 orders a day, that there's a potential that 25 of them could fail. Now you see it has updated, right? So it no longer am I cart 15949. I'm actually an order in the ERP 3873 and it has processed through. I'm going to turn this back over to you, Nicole.
Like, good thing we don't see anything that has aborted on there. I guess we haven't hit the 25% ratio yet to have. We'd have to have 4 orders, I guess, for one to bounce back. But it is pretty cool to watch, just kind of more in the weeds of what that looks like. So that's more of a transaction side. There are other things that you speak that the website and your ERP transfers besides orders. And you already know this, but item data, your customer data, if you have a PIM, these are other items that you're having to upload or deload, depending on what's in your inventory or what is happening in that season of your business. So even, I know that the opening quote was 25% of online orders are not going through, but how much more data are you loading between your ERP and your e-commerce site that causes your business to move forward that you don't want to lose? So your business is going to work best when these errors occur. Again, we would love for everything to be perfect, but we have to plan for the failure. When we want exponential orders and great customer service to go through, when errors happen, we have to have a way to mitigate that. So error detection here for WebAlliance, we call those data track. And what you're looking at on the screen is just a visual representation of, we are going to pull tables and tables of data, and we grab those tracks and we compare them to what your import is, or your export, whatever you're trying to pull off the website, is doing. And we flag it if it gets to a certain percentage of things that are different. So if you have somebody in your company who is updating a whole bunch of stuff in the PIM, we want to make sure you're not going to lose all of the work you have put into your item data because someone's running an upload that has totally different data tracks than what you have. So the fail safe and the safety catch there, just because those are substantial for a B2B website for you, is that when that happens, we reach out, we get a flag and an alert in our system, and we reach out to the company and say, hey, we noticed that there's 20% of this data is different. Are you trying to do something in your PIM? Or, hey, did you have a big trade show and you have a whole bunch of new customer data? Let's just make sure we're not erasing old customer data and putting new ones, overriding that, so that we always have a backup, which we'll talk about in just a second. We always have a backup for where that crucial data is stored. So we have all this data, we have all of these transactions. How do you avoid data loss inside of your e-commerce? And harkening back to the good old days when we had paper and pencil, even if you erased it, you can sort of see the outline. The problem now is, how many of you have experienced when something disappears and there's no kind of fine line in the paper to see where the track was? So we want to make sure that there are several things that you can do to avoid data loss, or at least kind of mitigate the risk for that. So these 3 that I've listed here are regular system audits and updates, which you know, but this also includes analyzing your orders. Have someone go through your orders, again, have someone go through that data track, on your PIM or your item data, and make sure that there aren't errors. This could be monthly, weekly, daily, however you would like to run that system audits, and make sure you have someone in your business that is capable and able to do that. Anybody super analytical on here? I'm sure that you are. You can analyze that data. Also, I think this is understood but needs to be said. You need to have some routine and frequent backups and maintenance of your redundant data. So how many files do you have that are the same and the same? And this day and age of cloud storage, sometimes it's something we forget. Like when we used to have those hard drives here, you don't want to get wet. What if there's a fire? Like you have to have a backup to the backup drive. But nowadays on the cloud, we don't think about it as much. Still requires maintenance, still requires you being really accurate with how you're storing your data. And then lastly, which we've covered in the last couple of slides, is ensuring you have access to your transaction data via some sort of hard copy. So whether your e-commerce provider, like we do, provides emails, do you have some kind of system where you're writing down this data? What happens if something happens? Like you need some hard copy of records. Doesn't mean you actually have to have a spiral copy. It can be a digital copy of a hard copy in your records, but those are some quick understandable ways for you to mitigate that data loss and not have to look really closely when you're erasing data to try to find the outline, that we can find it for you. So that's all we have for today. I just want to thank you for being on. Bill, thank you for showing how that looks, kind of like, I know that's kind of in the weeds and technical, but how that looks in the back end of our system. If you want more of this, we have a checklist we've provided for you. So like things you can go through. Do I have this in my e-commerce? What happens when this happens with my ERP system? There's a QR code right here on the screen. If you will pull out your smartphone, or when you're done, you'll get a email from us with this webinar. But you can click on that website. It's free download. You don't have to give us anything for it. And it will just kind of give you 15 items for you to really look at, maybe as you're making your plans for the year, of how am I going to mitigate when things aren't perfect? How am I going to lessen the 25% of transactions that are not going to go through this year for my business online? Because that is a pretty large number. So again, if you have any questions, there is our website, there is our QR code, and we so appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I stopped recording. No, not yet.